Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chonley, alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, they beat Dallas. They dumpster the Devils. That was embarrassing for them, wasn't it? Somehow won against the Flyers thanks to Shesterkin, and promptly lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But hey, 10 wins in a row. You're not going to win them all. It's a pretty good streak.
The win they had against the Devils might be the best I have ever seen them play in person, because we have seen historically, even when the Devils were awful, even when the Islanders were awful, those teams always get up for the Rangers. Those teams know that, hey, we might be having a bad season, but we beat the Rangers. We make our fans feel good for a night. And they came out and they body bagged them. I mean, to kill off the 5-minute major to start the game really swung the momentum. The Devils really just stood around for most of that 5 minutes, passing the puck around the perimeter of the power play. Maybe one dangerous look in those 5 minutes, but more or less the Rangers did a really good job of slowing that game down, dragging it out, and then as they got their feet into the game, started moving, they really put it away and put a lot of pressure on the Devils. You say the same thing about the game against the Flyers, where they didn't have their best effort. That was maybe a C plus at best, but Shesterkin was good enough to keep them around. Rempe big enough that the goalie didn't see it and the puck hit him on the way in. When you are finding ways, and this is something we talked about a lot in December, that when you are winning games by shooting percentage and goalieing, it feels like you're getting extremely lucky, because to some degree you are. But when you have the energy that the team has had over the last 2 weeks, that is infectious. And that's where it feels like, hey, as long as they are in the game, they're going to have a chance to win. And we talked about it last week, the idea that their confidence both works to their advantage and to their detriment, that they never feel like they're out of games, which is a good thing because they're never out of games, but it's also a bad thing because they can get behind 4 goals and still think they have a chance in that game because they're that good. And they've played reasonably well. The Columbus game, Columbus over the last 2 years, for whatever reason, has given them a hard time. I can't articulate exactly what it is. Merzlikins always seems to play particularly well against the Rangers, but second half of a back-to-back in what's a pretty clear trap game, I'm not going to get out on them too hard. I mean, the Miller-Trouba pair had a brutal night. They were on the ice for all 4 goals against. Just bad decision-making, but I'm willing to chalk that up to being tired and making bad decisions based on being overtired. As somebody in their mid-20s, I can say I make quite a few bad decisions based on being overtired. So I'm not going to hold it against them that much.
Yeah, that pairing was it. I tweeted this out last night that when K'Andre Miller is on his game, he is a joy. Watching K'Andre Miller make correct decisions, and he's skating well. He's got his confidence up when he's playing well. Maybe the last time was just a case of everybody's dead tired and they just wanted to get out, and that's why like they were that bad defensively. But Trouba, when Miller isn't on his game, you just see nights like that where the goal is being scored and he's not even on the screen. Like that's one of the tough nights for Miller. But overall, I mean, listen, they had a lot of really good wins. When you shut out a team like Calgary that was that's desperate to win, they traded away Elias Lindholm. This is a team that's angry, that wants to show that, to the general manager, to the fans, that, hey, like, we're still here, we're still going to compete, we're still going to try to win, and to shut them out in that kind of game. You beat Dallas, who, they're struggling a little bit here, but overall, they're still a cup contender, and you show up, and that was a really solid game. And against the Devils, which, like you said, this was one of their best games of the season. They showed up and I understand the Devils' power play looks completely lost. They are lost and they don't have a map or they don't have GPS. Like they're just out in no man's land. They don't know where to go.
Lindy Ruff has the map upside down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's got it in a different language that he can't speak, and he doesn't know why he can't read the map. It's nothing's going right for New Jersey. But at the same time, you still have to go in and you have to win the game, because if the Devils win that game, okay, well now not only are they feeling better, the Rangers again lose to another rival, and now you go into a game against Philadelphia that could have been a little bit different, and then here we go again. But the Devils got destroyed. The Rangers went into New Jersey, and it was essentially a home game. There were so many Rangers fans there. Like there was a lot of
a lot of Devils fans left early. As someone who was there by the start of the third period, most of the Devils fans had left at 4-1. 4-0.
Tough.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
it was pretty empty in there by the end of the game. I mean, by the actual end of the game, it was maybe 5,000 Ranger fans. That was all that was left in the building at that point. So
that's tough. But even then, like the Rangers, they go into a building that's not theirs and they dominate like it is their building. That's how well they played, and the Rangers deserve a lot of credit for that. The penalty kill did very well. I understand the New Jersey's power play is completely lost and doesn't know left from right, but at the same time, you still have to stop them. Like if you let the Devils players skate around and pass and shoot as much as they want, they're going to score. But the Rangers did a really good job of stopping any kind of momentum they had on the power play, and they played one of their best games of the season. Philadelphia, listen, that was prime Igor Shesterkin. Like, and even the one goal he gave up, he had no chance on. Like, what is he supposed to do when there's no deep like that? That was a defensive breakdown in front of him. He has he can't fit. He can't teleport to the other side of the net and just stop. Like, there's no way. That was a prime time Vezina caliber performance from Igor Shesterkin in that game that led the Rangers to barely win against the Flyers, and like that was a really tough game. The Flyers probably win that game more often than not if you run the Deservo meter and the 100 simulations and all those things. But Igor was fantastic, and the Rangers did just enough to win that game. Yeah, you win 10 in a row. You play back-to-back against Columbus. Was not a good performance by especially the defense. But again, when you win 10 in a row, back-to-back, everyone's tired. Listen, you can't. There's 82 games in a season, and there's no way you're going to be able to win them all.
No, absolutely not. And I will give the Flyers a lot of credit. They are not a particularly talented team, but they made the Rangers work really hard on Saturday, especially in that third period where it felt like the Flyers might have had a good look there, especially towards the end where they really sustained a good 3-4 minutes of pressure in the offensive zone. And especially, Couturier missed the open net.
Yeah.
The conversation's very different if Couturier puts that in, because Shesterkin was great on Saturday, but the Flyers, and that's something we've talked about a lot. You could say the same thing about the Calgary game as well. The Rangers are not a hardworking team. They are a talented team. When they play teams that take away space and force you to work hard to create offense, that's where the Rangers have typically struggled in years past, because they are not a cycle the puck, work hard for offense, generate sustained pressure type team. And that's what's ironic about them winning on the game on Saturday was a sustained pressure puck hitting a big guy on the way in that won them the game. And I figure now we can take 2 minutes and talk about Rempe, who, for all intents and purposes, he's making the guys on the team happy. That's ultimately what matters to me. His hockey sense, he's getting 4.5 minutes per game if you average it out. So I can't glean a whole lot about him as a hockey player from the amount of hockey he's played. He goes to the net a decent amount, which a lot of guys in the lineup don't do. I would like to see him actually play a little bit at some point in the next 2 weeks, because there's a real argument that if he's decent at playing, he should stay in the lineup past the deadline. But being that he's getting 5 minutes in the box every game and losing on 2 or 3 shifts every game, it's hard to get an evaluation on him. And I understand. A lot of people are going to say, well, what do you want him to do? Say no to fighting? There's no one's got a gun to his head. He doesn't have to fight. The entire point of fighting is to be a deterrent. The NHL as a league really worked hard to get rid of these types of fights where it's just the enforcers trying to feel important because they can't do anything else in the game. And that's not a slight on Rempe. That's a slight on Matt Martin. That's a slight on Nick Delorier. That's a slight on Matthew Oliver. Guys who are only in the league
Olivier,
to do that.
But yeah, no, point taken.
Yeah. Those are guys.
Yeah.
Those are guys who are only in the league to punch faces.
Sure.
Rempe's here to actually play hockey too, which is what's frustrating about this, because I would like to know if this kid can play or not, because they need fourth liners. And that fourth line, granted, it's only playing about 7-8 minutes at 5-on-5. the results aren't awful. And that's with Gaudreau out there. Gaudreau with 2 rookies is 46-47% in most of the underlyings, which would be the best Rangers fourth line combination since the first month of the season, when it was Gaudreau, Pitlick, and Vesey, and they were genuinely kind of working there for a little while. So I would like to see him actually play a little bit. And the Rangers are going to have to sit him aside and say, hey, man, we know you want to stay in the lineup, but it's not worth getting brain damage to fight these mouth breathers. Like, there's nothing to be gained by fighting these guys other than brain damage. That's literally all that's happening here for league minimum. Like, you're getting $600,000 over the next prorated $600,000 for 3 weeks, 4 weeks that he's going to be on the team, getting punched in the head, and he'll go back to Connecticut. I have a hard time as somebody who understands the gravity of brain damage in hockey thinking this is amusing. Like, it's a cool story, but at some point, it's got to be about the guy, because the way everyone's talking about him right now, they're treating him like a circus attraction, like he's only here to fight and not to play hockey, which isn't fair to him either.
He's 20. Listen, he's 21 and Canadian, but also Matt Rempe for president. I mean, like, this guy. Yeah, he's first of all, he scored a goal. He almost scored 2. Like that the second one that was credited to Edstrom. I still think it was off of Rempe, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Like, this man's going to the net. Yeah, he's the fights or whatever. The fight against Lurie was just fun to watch. Like that was, and a lot of people around the league are echoing that. Like, that was a battle for the ages. Whether you want to argue there was anything like genuinely to be gleamed from that fight, did anything lead to that fight, did anything happen as a result of that fight? The answer probably is no. But the fight in and of itself was fun to watch, sure. But like, yeah, I tweeted this out during the game as well, that like this man owes Gary Bettman rent. Like, he has lived in the penalty box for the few games that he's been over here, and at a certain point, I would agree with you. I would like to see if this man can actually play hockey. Like, he's 6'8.5", according to Matt Rempe himself. Like,
But you know how tall. Men are when we start getting into half inches. When men get into half inches, Andrew, that's when the bullshit starts coming out.
He tall. Listen, he's a behemoth of an individual. He's 21. He probably should be playing basketball. If you're 21 years old, you're 6'8.5". He should have been the Knicks. The Knicks need a backup center right now, because like Robinson's hurt, Hartenstein's on 1 foot. Like Taj Gibson can't play. Like, they need him. But like, it goes beyond just he tall and he fights. Like, at a certain point, I'd agree with you. I need to see if this man can actually play hockey. He has a goal, because, like you said, he went to the net, screened the goalie. This man had not a single clue what planet he was on, because he couldn't see anything, because this guy is so freaking tall. And he scored a goal, and he led to the second goal last night against Columbus. Yeah, he didn't get credit for it, but because he drove to the net, that caused chaos, and that caused the puck to go. I think it was off of Jake Bean and into the net. Like, this is something that the Rangers are missing in their roster. Forget the fighting, forget his height, forget all of that. This is somebody who we haven't seen a whole lot of tape on how he actually plays the game in an NHL environment. But off the ripper, his thought process of, I'm just gonna go to the net and see what happens, is something that a lot of the forwards on this team don't have. So that's already a big plus to have on your fourth line. And also, he's a goofy goober, so he's fun.
As far as the fourth line, and I agree with you in that respect, when you're a team like the Rangers that has a really talented top six, like genuinely talented, you want your fourth line to kind of be your change of pace line, that they're just going to cycle the puck in the other team's zone 45 seconds, a minute and a half. They don't even need to generate a scoring chance. They just need to make the other team play defense for a little bit, just so everybody else can catch their breath. Those types of sustained offensive zone pressures where the defense doesn't have to defend, they can just worry about trying to generate some offense. That's the ideal outcome for your fourth line. And they've done a decent job of that when they've actually been together. And real quick, I said this during the game on Thursday, and I'll reiterate it now in a little better of an explanation. He just needs to not throw the hit on Bastian. It's that simple. It's not that it's a clean hit or a dirty hit. It's unnecessary. Bastion's bent over. If I watching the game in person could see Rempe lining him up and go, oh fuck, I could tell he had enough time to pull up. I'm not saying don't hit the guy, but you can't blow him up. And as a guy who the referees are going to be eyeballing you as the biggest guy on the ice, you need to.
It's tough to miss.
Exactly.
Like
That's the thing. And a lot of people will say, well, it wasn't a headshot, or where would you like him to go? He needs to understand that he is going to be under a lot of scrutiny in every aspect of his game when it comes to the other team and the officials because of the nature of the style he is playing. That's not a knock on him as a person. It's the referees are going to have a hard on for you when all you do is fight and instigate. So if you throw a questionable hit and put yourself in a position where you leave it at the discretion of the referees to throw you out of the game, that's on you. You need to be smart enough to know, hey, the game just started. Let me not do something questionable, because even if I don't get even if I don't get a penalty for the hit, I'm going to have to fight. And if I have to fight, that's going to slow the game down. And the other team might get a power play out of that. And a lot of people will say, well, the guys on the team appreciate the fighting, the physical play. And that's true. That's why, and the fact that they're winning, all of that interconnected is why I'm more or less agnostic on this right now. If they start rattling off losses, he starts taking more stupid penalties, then we can circle back around and say, hey, maybe he should come out. But for now, the guys on the team greatly appreciate it. I mean, he's gotten the hat twice in 4 games in 8 minutes of time. So the guys on the team appreciate somebody who plays the way he does. But at some point, he needs to play hockey, and he does need to be smarter. It's just a matter of that. It's the same thing we always talk about with Trouba. It's not whether the hit is clean or dirty. It's whether the hit is necessary. That hit on Bastion was clearly unnecessary. All he's got to do is leverage his enormous frame against Bastion, and he's going to win that puck 100 times out of 100. And one last thing on that. I don't know how a concussion spotter let Bastion go. I
was just about to interrupt you.
I have no idea how he gets back in that game.
I don't know.
He stood up.
Now he's out. He's not even playing now.
Yeah.
Like what the NHL does is supposedly at the forefront of battling concussions and making sure these things don't happen. And then Nathan Bastion gets demolished. His brain like just is flying around in his head, and then he gets back out there. And then he gets injured again, like also in the same game. Like, what are we doing here? The NHL supposedly I remember a few times I took Shesterkin out. I think it was like during the playoffs, like he got a puck to the head and they took him out and all these things.
Yeah, that was at the end of a game. I want to say against Columbus last year where he had to come out for like 3 minutes or something. But like
Bastion gets to stay?
Yeah, I don't understand, man. I feel like the NHL is about 10 years behind the NFL in that regard. Where back in the day,
which is bad. That's saying a lot.
Yes.
If you're behind the NFL in terms of concussions, we got a different problem here to tackle.
Yeah, it was pretty common
no pun
in the
intended.
NFL.
I said tackle.
It was pretty common in the NFL over the last decade. I would say prior to the last 5 years, it was pretty common where if you got pulled from the game by the concussion spotter, you would be able to come back in. This year, this past NFL season, only 2 guys came back into a game after getting pulled by the concussion spotter. So eventually we'll get there, but the NHL is about 10 years behind the NFL in that regard. So one last thing on where we're at right now. The thing that's most encouraging about this most recent stretch is we got signs of life from Igor. That's the most encouraging thing and ultimately the biggest thing. I went and pulled the numbers. So starting with the game they won against Ottawa, which was on the 27th of January, 8.47 goals saved above expected. That's third of all goalies during that window. And Quick only got 3 starts in the 10 games, but he was 8th in that window of 10 games. So you're getting signs of life from the goaltending. The 5-on-5 play is fine. They got to get the power play going, but the kill has been good, which is made up for the fact the power play isn't going. In that 10-game win streak, the power play was 5 for 37, which is 13.5%, which is, I wanted to say, if I remember correctly, the 3rd worst of any team during this stretch. So the power play's got to get ironed out. I would like to see a tinkering and deployment, whether that's or reorienting where guys are, whether that's changing the personnel outright, Because when they get in trouble, when this power play unit's got in trouble, the problem has typically been that Panarin, Fox, and Zibanejad are just passing the puck around the point in that 3-man high game, and they're not creating any disruption in the defense. They're not moving the defense around. So all it's doing is giving the defense time to adjust to where the puck goes. The shooting lane isn't there, and then they have to pass again, and then they shoot into a congested shooting lane. It gets blocked, and it goes the other way. So and you saw it a lot against the Flyers. And granted, the Flyers have a great penalty kill, one of the best in the entire league, but that's really where the power play has struggled this year, is they got to move their feet. Great power plays move the puck and their feet. Struggling power plays only move the puck. So this is correctable. We know the Rangers power play is capable of playing at a high level. It's simply a matter of getting it going, but because they've won 10 in a row, it hasn't been as glaring of an issue.
Well, that's the thing too, is a lot of the, like we talked about this last week when they were on the 7-game winning streak, is a lot of the problems that they've been having all year are still there. They're just happening to win the games. Which,
well, they're getting the goaltending now. That's the difference.
That's one of the biggest, red flags of the past few months that have been corrected, at least for right now. Shesterkin's playing extremely well. He's back, baby. This man went to the All-Star game, and now all of a sudden he came back and he's looking like the Shesterkin that we all know and love. So he's been on fire. So that was one of the biggest problems that the Rangers have fixed, question mark. I mean, hopefully he continues to play this well, but the power play hasn't been moving their feet as much as they have been in the past, which has led to not scoring as many power play goals. Because again, one of the biggest ways of creating your own space within the power play is creating chaos, especially in front of the net. That's where you get the most amount of space generated to get a pass through or a puck through or a deflection or what have you. If you just stand still and you're passing it around, guess what the defense is going to do? Absolutely nothing. They're going to watch you play hot potato for 45 seconds, and then you take a shot that's blocked off somebody's shin, and then they'll clear it out of the zone and go for a change. Like the whole point of why a power play is so dangerous. And the Rangers know this because they were red hot for 3 months prior to this, a little bit of a cold stretch. They know this. When you move your feet as well as move the puck, you create chaos for the defense. They don't know where you're going, and they don't know where the puck is going. So they can't. It's a lot harder to read when no one has when it's not telegraphed what you're going to do next. The Rangers have gotten away from that a little bit, and that's one thing, again, that's correctable because we know that they can do this, but that's one thing that they need to get back to, because they haven't been moving as much, moving the puck a lot, but the defense doesn't move just because you pass, and that's a problem.
Yeah, when the power play is going at its best, what they love to do is Fox will move ever so slightly from the high point by himself inward, which will bring a penalty killer to him, which changes the math. Once that penalty killer comes out to where Adam Fox is, then it becomes 4-on-3 down low in between the circles. And that's generally where the Rangers have had a lot of success with that cross-seam pass, whether it be all the way across to Zibanejad on the one-timer, or Trocheck in the middle, or Kreider at the net front. So if they can get Fox moving his feet a little bit more, if they can get Zibanejad a little closer to the net, I know he's got a big shot, but he's shooting a little worse this year than his career averages in all situations, but and we're going to talk about him at 5-on-5 in a few minutes. I pulled some numbers on that, but he's too far away from the net when he's shooting on the man advantage, and it's a lower quality shot. That's not to say you can't score on a lower quality shot, but it is more difficult. And ultimately, your goal is to play as efficiently as possible, and that's to create as dangerous of chances as possible, because that's more likely to result in a goal. Speaking of Zibanejad, and I'll pull this up. I have a nice little graphic here for everyone watching on YouTube. So this is Zibanejad's individual stats. This does not include his line mates. This does not include power play. This is only 5-on-5. So going across the top, it's individual chances 4. So that's just his shot, his scoring opportunities, which is anytime he releases the puck, misses the net, block shot, whatever. That's that. Individual high danger are chances within the circles to the posts. So if you drew a diagonal line from the faceoff dots to the posts, within that, from the high slot to the net front, that's high danger. Individual expected goals is just the value, the implied value of his scoring chances, and then shooting percentage. Everybody knows what shooting percentage is. The numbers bear out that he is shooting less than he has at any point in his career. He's below his averages, and his shooting percentage is down because he is taking less dangerous shots. It is harder to score, lower quality chances. That's what makes them poor. It is not that he is not playing with a certain style or vigor. It is he is not shooting the puck enough. It is making the rest of his line more responsible for scoring on offense. As you indicated, you tweeted last night, he hasn't scored at 5-on-5 since December. This is not something you want to see from your first line center who has flashed the ability to be a great player. Right now, Zibanejad looks like an empty calorie counting stat guy because he is not putting pressure on defenses. He is not making defenses work. He is only scoring the easy ones. And I'm going to pull up his shot map here and turn it over to Andrew because this is really his mountain to die on, but I wanted to pull some numbers to support what he was arguing.
Yeah, listen, and I say this whenever I talk about Zibanejad or Trouba or Miller struggling or Goudreau. It's like, I'd rather not talk negatively about these people. I would rather Zibanejad score 100 goals and the Rangers to just waltz to a Stanley Cup and then we all just go home happy. Like that's we continue to highlight these problems because they're problems that aren't being fixed. And when your first line center is making $8.5 million for forever with a no move clause and he is doing cardio at 5-on-5 offensively, that's a massive problem when he's supposed to be your top driver of offense. I tweeted this out earlier today. I went back into Mika Zibanejad's game logs, starting from December 27th of 2023 against the Capitals, because this man has played 26 games. He's got 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points. Now, at the surface, he's like, oh, well, what's the problem? He's got 21 points. That's first line. You know, he's still putting the points up. Okay. But he's got 6 goals. He's got 3 power play goals, 2 short-handed goals, and 1 game-winning goal in overtime on the 3-on-3. The last 5-on-5 goal that Mika Zibanejad has scored was at 7:13 of the second period against the Buffalo Sabres on December 23rd, 2023. It has been over 2 whole calendar months since your first line center has scored a 5-on-5 goal. If it's Zibanejad, like I would be saying this if it was Zibanejad or Kreider or Trocheck or Lafreniere or whoever it is, it's still it's still a massive problem. No matter how you look at it, Zibanejad is really good at creating offense for his teammates at 5-on-5, where he's got a lot of primary assists. He's created, he loves the pass. The problem is that he's only passing. Like he even against Columbus, he had that 2-on-1 where Kreider was way off in no man's land to his side, and Zibanejad had essentially the wide open lane to just rip it. And he instead tried to force the pass, and Kreider was a little bit too far to the right, and he didn't get it all of his shot, and the Merzlikins made the pad save, and then that was kind of that. That play really highlights the issue with Mika Zibanejad this season, and also last season as well, but this season has been a lot worse, where Zibanejad has an awesome shot. We see it during the power play, and we saw it against Chicago when he scored that overtime goal. He's got an insane shot. It's so fast. It's so accurate. When he wants to use it, it is deadly. Why does he never want to use it if it's 5-on-5? That is my... I would be at I wish I was covering the team so I could ask this to him directly, because he has the skill set. We see it, when he's on the man advantage. We've seen it in seasons past. We've seen it in short bursts this season as well. He has it. It's not like he never had it and we're expecting something more out of him. That's not the case. He's an insanely good 5-on-5 player when he wants to be. The problem is, for some reason, he chooses not to be, and that is really drawing up the offense from the first line. Because if you're a first line player, you should be driving 5-on-5 offense. That's, again, we talk about this every week pretty much. Most of the game is at 5-on-5. So if you're not driving 5-on-5 offense and you're getting paid $8.5 million to be the first line center, why are you getting that contract? That is one of my disconnects right now, and it's tough. It's tough for me to be like, oh well, here's Zibanejad not scoring, but like the Rangers have won 10 games in a row. But like both of these things can be true. The Rangers have won 10 in a row despite Zibanejad not doing anything at 5-on-5 offensively. Like they're not mutually exclusive, and that's one of my frustrations.
Yeah. Ultimately, the best Zibanejad ever played was that stretch at the end of February into March of 2020 when he had something ludicrous, like I want to say 12 goals in 8 games, that the 5-goal game was in there. He was shooting the puck at the highest clip of his entire career that season. The Rangers were playing at their fastest pace of any Rangers team over the last 5-6 year window, where it was just a track meet, up and down, up and down, up and down. And the Rangers, as we know, are not a particularly fast team. They are not a team that has a ton of foot speed. And when they play teams that are well structured through the middle, that take away that cross seam pass, they have a harder time generating offense. So all of that in conjunction with Zibanejad not shooting as well as he has in previous years tells you that this is both a confidence thing where he is forcing that pass because he doesn't feel like he can take that shot. And then 2, it's telling you that they need to recalibrate whoever the first line right wing is with them, because that player needs to be able to do more to get Zibanejad more space. And that's ultimately, I think, one of the real takeaways I have from this season is when you see what Panarin's doing, where he is shooting the puck more than he has at any point in his career, his entire career. And Panarin's had several really high caliber, top 5, top 10 player in the league type seasons. He is shooting more than he ever has in his entire career. And the trickle down effect to everybody else who plays with them is insane.
Well, think of it this way. He's got 33 goals this season, which is a career high.
And it's February.
It's February.
Yeah.
My man's like, that's one of the things too, is he's always had this amazing shot, but now he's using it, shooting it from anywhere, and because he's got the talent and he's so deadly with his shot that no matter where he's shooting it from, you think it's going to go in because of how good his shot is. And Zibanejad has maybe not as good of a shot as Panarin, because there's only a handful of people on the planet that have that kind of shot, but his shot is also really, really freaking good. But for some reason, it's kind of the polar opposite, where Panarin has it and he's shooting it a lot. Whenever Zibanejad has it, he's shooting it almost never. So it's a very strange dynamic from that point, from that front.
Part of me is pretty convinced this has to do with the fact that they've been carrying a third person on their line, him and Kreider, who just isn't much of a threat to shoot, and defenses don't respect that as much. And they want Zibanejad to take that contested shot where he's got pressure on him, or to pass. And that's part of why. It's why I will never, and I know this, I am not a shoot guy. If you sit with me at a Ranger game, you won't hear me say shoot once the entire 60 minutes of the game, because the shooting lanes are very different when you are watching on TV, when you are at the game, versus when you are on the ice. Zibanejad is not going to take a shitty shot, and when he does, it gets blocked and goes back the other way. So they need to find a component, a third person to be a component on that line that's going to give Zibanejad more space, because I really do think that's part of this, that they do not have as much room as they have in years past, because that third piece on that line is just not much of a threat to shoot, whether it's Kakko, whether it's VZ, earlier in the year when it was Blake Wheeler. Teams aren't scared of those guys shooting. They're perfectly fine with giving that guy space, and they would rather queue up Zibanejad. And Kreider, God bless him, he's not going to make plays in between the circles in the offensive zone. He's great in transition. He's pretty good along the boards, but his link-up play is not why he's a first-line player. He's not going to whip those wicked passes after long, sustained offensive zone time. So when defenses have time to queue in on your better players and force, okay, Zibanejad's either got to pass this puck or he's got to take a contested shot, we can live with that calculus. Or if he passes to Kreider, Kreider's got to shoot, because we know he isn't as good of a passer, and the play is probably going to die on his stick. That's really what it comes down to in my mind, that they need to get somebody that's capable of bringing out more offense from them. And that's been the argument for bringing in an augmenting talent as opposed to ceiling raising talent, is they need to get more out of their existing guys. And I think they do that by bringing in a good supporting piece. Looking ahead now, we still got quite a ways to go. We're still a solid 2.5 weeks away from the trade deadline. You will hear every player under the sun linked to the Rangers. I'm sure you'll hear Elias Pettersson linked to the Rangers at some point in the next week and a half, just because of the reports out of Vancouver. And the Rangers are always a team that's used to drive up the prices, because the Rangers are a team that have been known to have their hand in the honeypot for pretty much every player on the planet if they're available. So all I'm going to say in regards to the deadline is take things with a grain of salt. More likely than not, you won't know the trade's happening until it happens. That's the way I would talk about it.
Well, the graphic designers will let us know, because the insiders won't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the insiders don't have sources. The insiders are all on the same email list that once the trade gets processed by Central Registry, they check their email. Oh, we've got a trade. And they go copy, tap, paste into Twitter or whatever social media platform. And that's how they report the news. So there will be every kind of name under the sun linked to the Rangers. My strongest preference is a first line right wing and then a center if they can facilitate it. I've also come around on the idea of adding a seventh defenseman, just because the playoffs defensemen get hurt. It can never hurt to have an extra body. I don't know how much they trust Zach Jones to be the seventh D in the playoffs, being that they haven't really ever given him an opportunity to do anything meaningful.
I think the counterpoint to that real quick is that if they don't trust him to be the seventh defenseman, they trade him before the deadline. Because
I don't think they would do. I think that's what Robertson is. I think Robertson is the defenseman they're going to trade, not Jones. Because if they were going to trade Jones, I think they would want him playing. I think they would want.
I disagree with that, because at the end of the day, like, you're not going to get a whole lot for Zach Jones, whether you play him 12 minutes a game or not. And
I mean, in the AHL, I think there's a real argument that he'd be playing first pair in the AHL right now if they were going to try and pump up his value of anything, because he has no NHL. He's got what, 30, 40 games.
I mean,
of NHL
yeah, but
experience?
We're kind of splitting hairs right now. This conversation is kind of, that doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. But like, I think the Rangers don't trust Zach Jones at all, and to some extent it's warranted. To some extent he's played pretty well considering the circumstances, when he has been inserted in the lineup this season. I don't really know what Chris Drury is thinking with Zach Jones, because he's kind of just sitting right now. Like he's getting NHL money sitting in the press box, which is great, right? I'll do that anytime. You want me sitting up there for that kind of money? Just let me know what time and what day, I'll be there, baby. But like, from a NHL career perspective, he's not doing much of anything besides practicing with the team and kind of just sitting there and watching. So do the Rangers trust Zach Jones to play if there's an injury in the playoffs? I don't know the answer to that. Like, I do feel like they would have given him more runway this season if they did trust him more / wanted to see more out of him. Maybe the Schneider or Jones pairing, or maybe play one instead of the other. Like, maybe that would have been more of a presence if they wanted to see Zach Jones more, or if they had more confidence in them. I don't know the answer to that. We're arguing about the sixth defenseman, seventh defenseman. So it's, it doesn't mean like a massive deal in the grand scheme of things, but you'd rather your seventh defenseman be good as opposed to not good, right? Like, that's kind of the basis for everything. So maybe Robertson, I think if Robertson gets moved, it'll be in a big trade, because like Zach Jones is at this point, he has NHL experience. Matt Robertson is, I guess, more of a prospect to put in a trade. Robertson will probably get moved if he does get moved, I foresee him being moved for that first line right winger. That'll probably be how it happens. But for Zach Jones, there'll probably be an accompanying trade if he does get moved.
Yeah, no, my big point is that I think they need to add another defenseman.
Sure.
Because Hartford doesn't have anyone. We talked about last week that they have 6 healthy defensemen, and they had to make an ECHL call up because they didn't have a 7th defenseman.
Sure.
So I think there's a real argument the Rangers need one more body on that back end because they don't trust Zach Jones. And I think whether or not they trade for somebody else, I don't think that matters as far as what Zach Jones' future with the team is. Ultimately, they need more guys. But the good thing, and we can wrap up on this note, the last 2 weeks are your proof of concept. The last 2 weeks are your proof that this team can get really hot and play at a pretty high level. The wins over Dallas and Colorado in particular standing out as far as they can play with the best teams in the league. This is not close to a finished product. They are going to add to this group. That's what your takeaway should be from the last 2 weeks. Yeah, there are things to clean up, but this is a pretty good team that's going to add at least one, if not two players, maybe even three. Still has room to improve. And it's first line center, if he wakes up from his hibernation, poised to explode. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a very different team, not just on paper, but in terms of the actual results. Over the last 2 weeks, it's been a lot of goaling, and it's been a lot of we've been getting goals from random guys. That is a good indicator of a team that can hang around. That's what you need to be at the end of the season going into the playoffs. You don't have to win every game, but you show me signs of life consistently. You show me marginal improvement here and there, and you show the ability to get really, really hot like they did. I feel pretty good about where they're at, even though, you know, there are real questions about the lineup. Not concerns, questions, I should say.
We mentioned this a lot over the course of the season on the show, where the Rangers will have some kind of issue, and we will collectively say we would rather have this issue now than in June. If Mika Zibanejad, game one, round one of the playoffs, starts destroying people at 5-on-5 and scores eight goals in the first round, and then like all, you know, he's the Conn Smythe winner, and the Rangers win the cup because he has 40 points. That's fantastic. I would rather Zibanejad go 26 games without a 5-on-5 goal now than play 26 games in the playoffs and not have a single 5-on-5 goal then. That's how I'm looking at it. Is like, here is a clear fundamental problem of the first line on the team. There is a way, there's multiple ways to get this fixed, to get this sorted. Get a first-line right winger to create more space for Zibanejad, like you talked about. Maybe get Panarin to shave Zibanejad's head, and all of a sudden, like maybe that'll get him to shoot the puck more. Like, who knows? But the Rangers, like you said, they've won 10 in a row, and there's a lot of the problems that we've been talking about are still there. But despite that, they've won 10 in a row. Yeah, they lost against Columbus,
and they have room to get better.
Exactly. They're like there's room. A lot of their problems can be fundamentally improved. That's the biggest key takeaway here, is they've won 10 in a row because Rempe is scoring, like Veezy's scoring. There's guys on this roster that can contribute offensively when your top lines aren't getting anything done. And that's been a massive boost for them throughout the course of these 10 games and beyond. It doesn't have to be Panarin every night scoring a hat trick to get this team to win a hockey game. There's a lot of talent on this roster, and a lot of these problems that we talked about and highlighted can be maybe like fixed would be the ideal, but at least improved on would be great. So all it takes now is, okay, well, the trade deadline is coming up. Like, you know, it's not a ways away anymore. The trade deadline is coming up pretty soon. So we're going to start to see some dominoes fall sooner rather than later. It's just a matter of what Christopher is going to address, or what he thinks is the biggest issue. I mean, I can guarantee you that he knows that the first line right wing spot is a gaping hole that he's going to have to fix. He knows that for sure. For 100% he knows that. He knows it, I feel like, better than we do, because he's used Blake Wheeler as a stopgap there for the most of the season. Now he's out until whenever. Who knows when Blake Wheeler's going to get back. Hopefully he's, you know, he can get back sooner rather than later, just healthy. Like, forget hockey for a second. Like, that was a scary injury. Hopefully he gets, you know, okay soon. But like, that's been an issue for pretty much the entire season, and Chris Drury knows this. So I would have to imagine that there is going to be a trade before the deadline to get somebody to play with Zibanejad and Kreider. Who that is, it could be Eberle, it could be some surprise player. Who knows? It's speculation at this point. Trust the graphic designers on this one. But at the end of the day, there's going to be additions. Just have to wait and see on who they are and as long as, because today is the 6-year anniversary of that Ryan McDonagh and JT Miller trade that the Rangers got absolutely nothing to show for. So as long as that doesn't happen, should be okay.
Yeah, ultimately, they know they need to improve. As you said, Blake Wheeler was very clearly, he was supposed to be the 9th forward on this team. He was supposed to be the 9th or 10th forward. He was supposed to be here for intangibles and leadership. And the way they talked about him, you would think they were all on the Eastern Front together. But at the very least, we know the Rangers are in it. We know they have the capabilities of making something happen. They are going to add to this team. And the last thought I will leave you with, other than Florida, the East is pretty wide open. Right now, if you're looking at the way things are lining up, I'm not scared of Detroit. I'm not scared of Tampa Bay. I'm not scared of the Flyers. The only team that genuinely concerns me in the East is Florida. And that's mostly just because their star players are better than our star players. And even then, it's close enough where all you got to do is get lucky 4 out of 7 times. So that's a good place to be. On paper, the Rangers are pretty close to Florida. And that's really all you need in the hockey playoffs. And that's our parting thought for you is if you're close enough where we're talking close to a coin flip, that's pretty good odds. If you get too close to a 50-50, you take that most of the time.
Yeah. Well, the one team I'd also say is for Carolina, because it's been reported at this point and that Carolina is looking to trade Marty Necas for somebody who can actually score goals. So we'll see how that goes. I know him and Rob Brindamore don't see eye to eye, depend on how he's supposed to play, and I know he's a defensive liability a lot of the time. So the Hurricanes are looking to ship him out for somebody that is more reliable in their top 6. So if that does happen, the Hurricanes are going to be a little bit more of a dangerous team. And also, I think Larry Brooks posted this in his article the other day that Jacob Markstrom said no to New Jersey, but that could be.
No, he didn't. I've seen like 8 different versions of that story about what happened with Markstrom. I've seen people say Markstrom said no. I've seen people say Calgary doesn't want to retain money. I've seen people say Calgary doesn't want to retain
regardless
that much money.
of how it like. Joe Micheletti on the show, like on the broadcast when they played the Flames, were like, yeah, he said no. I mean, whatever the situation is, there is because
the Devils are dead. I think the Devils.
No. Well, what I'm saying to you is like there is a way for Carolina to get Jacob Markstrom, and then
they have 3 goalies on their roster. They're not going to give up assets for another one.
They could listen. I'm not saying that they won't move him or like it's a possibility because at the end of the day,
Carolina only makes stupid trade deadline trades, Andrew. They are not going to address the critical flaw of their team. They are not going to trade for a goalie. They are not going to because they have Kochetkov who's playing pretty well. They have Anderson. They have Renta.
You can't. Well, they can't rely on Ranta and Anderson. They can't rely on those.
They have 3. They're not going to add a 4th.
They're never healthy.
Mix. And Calgary's not going to take a goalie back for Markstrom because they already have 2 goalies. That I can't see that. I can't see that.
I mean, I know they have a lot of faith in Dustin Wolf, in the future. I don't
They've
particularly
got him and
think
they've got Dan Vladar.
I don't think they particularly have a long-term plan with Dan Vladar.
They are going to take their lumps the rest of the season by design. They want to go from being the 9th team in the playoff standings to being the 14th team. They want to stink down the stretch. Now, the team has to get the message, but if you trade the goalie who's playing like a Vezina guy, that will help. That will help. All right, Andrew, I have one question for you, and then we can get out of here.
Yeah.
No elaboration, no qualifiers.
Okay.
Which is worse? McDonagh and JT Miller for the mystery box or Pavel Buchnevich for Sammy Blais in a 2nd-round pick? No elaboration, no explanation. Which is worse?
I'm gonna I think the Buchnevich is worse. Only if I may break the rules a little bit, elaborate for a second, because it hurts them now. Yeah. The trade, the McDonagh and Miller trade was a disaster for the Rangers, but the thing that makes it a lot more palatable is that Panarin wanted to come here, Fox wanted to come here, Shesterkin's been amazing. Like there has been enough holes that have been filled by that ridiculously awful trade that have made it a little bit better. The Buchnevich trade literally is hurting the Rangers right now today, because they are missing that first line right winger spot that Buchnevich had, and now they need Bush, like they literally need him. Like that's all it is. So it's hurting them now. They are Stanley Cup contenders who are missing Pavel Buchnevich. That trade was worse because of the implications that it could have on their Stanley Cup aspirations.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Ultimately, when you're rebuilding, you want as many throws at the dartboard as you possibly can. They missed the dartboard entirely on 2 of the 3 throws.
The mystery box could have been anybody. It could have been Cirelli and Sergachev. It could have been anybody.
Ultimately, I think the moral of the story is you just don't trade with Steve Yzerman.
Yeah.
I think that's the moral of the story. Like Tampa Bay, and people just took Tampa Bay's like scraps forever because under the idea, well, if Tampa Bay drafted them, they have to be good. Like they did that to the Rangers how many times? Ultimately, it's over with. It's done with. But God, it would have been nice if they could have actually gotten something useful. Like if they could have gotten Tony Cirelli to be the 2C, and Tampa Bay probably doesn't win 2 cups if they don't have Cirelli, or even Sergachev if he's the focal point. So that's your parting thought. Make sure you...
Would you rather have a boat or what's in the mystery box? Well, anything could be in the mystery box. Could even be a boat.
Even a boat. That's the logic you're going to see a lot of over the next 2 weeks as teams talk themselves into taking very mediocre packages for good players. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the Liberty Blue Pod. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're subscribed over on YouTube, throw us a like on the video. We'll talk to you guys next week. Later.
Later.